Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first episode in our event series of Real People, Big Astronomy for the National Science Foundation funded Big Astronomy project. My name is Renee Kerrigan. I'm a member of the leadership team for Big Astronomy, and I'm very honored and happy to have Dr. Connie Walker with us today, who is a scientist for the National Science Foundation's NOIRLab, and she'll be talking to us about the Citizen Science Project Globe at Night and how you can be involved in important science from your own backyard, and also sharing with us a little bit about what inspired her to become involved in science and astronomy. So if you have questions, please feel free to leave us a comment and we'll be monitoring that. And Connie would be happy to answer them at the end of her presentation. And please also drop us a line, let us know where you are watching from, and say hello in the comments. But today, I'd also like to thank Carolina Vargas, who is with us and is creating Spanish captions for this event. She came in at the last hour to do it for us. If you can't see the Spanish captions on our Facebook Live program, we apologize for that, and they will be available on our YouTube channel later today. And with that, I'd like to turn us over to Dr. Connie Walker. Thank you for being with us.
It is my sincere pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. And as she said, I'm from NOIRLab. That's one of the national observatory. That is the national observatory for the United States, and it has programs that are in Chile, which I'll show you in a minute, as well as here in Tucson and a few others that I'll mention. Here, I would like to talk to you about come to the dark side, and there's a need to protect the starry night sky, and I want to talk a little bit about that in the next few minutes. And I want to show you first in this next slide that I mentioned that I'm from Tucson, Arizona, in the U.S. of A., and I'm near one of the NSF's NOIRLab's programs, Kidd Peak National Observatory in Tucson. Talk to you about come to the dark side, and there's a need to protect the starry night sky. Do you hear that? I'm sorry. There's a...
It was my fault. It's fixed.
Well, hello again, everybody. And the other program I wanted to mention is very, very important is Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory, also known as CTIO. And these arrows point to their locations, and they're, of course, thousands of miles apart, but they're all part of one big family of NOIRLab. And the reason why I'm really and kind of making this a big point is that it was because of our one of our programs that we had many years ago in 2002 actually, that we started called Astro Chile, that the Globe at Night was actually born, and it was a really, really amazing situation. We had teachers in La Serena, Chile, and we had teachers in Tucson, Arizona, and of course the students in Chile speak Spanish, and the students that are, some of the students from Tucson actually are of Hispanic descent, and they speak Spanish as well. So we had this wonderful situation where the kids could get together by video conference and get to know each other. And they would do great stuff like moonwalks across the stage, or or talking about their favorite sport that they liked or whatever. It was a lot of fun. But we did have them successfully do an amazing project on light pollution, because they both lived in two cities that were very close to major observatories. And light pollution was a major issue, and people in those cities knew that they had to try to keep the levels of light as low as possible in order for those observatories to successfully be able to do research. So and for about 3 years we had these projects that we would do using Orion in the winter for both Chile and Arizona, and Cygnus and Sagittarius, like right now in September, in the fall, for the northern and southern hemispheres respectively. And what the kids would do was pretty basic. We had maps of both of the cities, and we would use colored push pins, each color representing a different level of how light polluted their night sky might be, or how bright or dark their night sky might be. And it caught the attention of an incredible organization that's still in existence, running strong today, called Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment, or otherwise known globally as GLOBE. And GLOBE used its resources. It caught their attention, and in 3 months' time, they had created an online citizen science program we all call Globe at Night. And that's how it was born in February of 2006. And this all happened in like 3 months. They were able to do this. It was pretty impressive. So hats off to all the teachers and students that were involved with that in both La Serena and in Arizona. And hats off to Globe for helping us start this program that's now in its 14th year. So I'd like to start off with just putting you sort of in the mood of what we're trying to convey here. So I want you to first imagine that you lived in the most beautiful countryside with a green meadow filled with flowers and trees and a trickling stream, and the whole area was just teeming with wildlife. And this place was in your family for generations. It's a true treasure to your entire family. It inspired your grandfather to become a writer, your mom to become an artist, you a musician, and your daughter a scientist. What would you do if one day you found the landscape and the water polluted? What action might you take? Now let's transfer that thought of the landscape to the night sky. And consider this picture, or imagine maybe the most beautiful starry night sky that you've ever seen in your life. So many stars that you can't tell one constellation from another. And the Milky Way arching overhead, so bright that it casts a shadow of you on the ground. Believe it or not, scenes like this exist, but they're slowly disappearing. Now imagine that you live in one of these cities that you can see very, very clearly on this map of the night sky from a satellite looking down at the Earth. What kind of sky would you see if you lived in one of those cities? In this case, the pollution comes from a form of light, basically from light, by people for whom lighting up is a commonplace occurrence. It happens on a regular basis. People just do it. They don't think about it, right? It's not the fact that lighting is bad. Lighting has its purpose, but bad lighting is not good. The challenge to fix the problem then becomes threefold, or in basically 3 parts. First, how do you convince people living in cities that there is actually a problem if they've never experienced a beautiful starry night sky, bursting with bright stars and streaked by the glow of the Milky Way, just like what you would see on any one of the Chilean mountaintop observatories? Second, how do you convince them to care? And third, how do you convince them to care enough to actually do something about it? So the night has been a source of inspiration and wonder since the dawn of humanity. Our collective cultural heritage of the starry night sky has inspired many artists, like Van Gogh in his painting Starry Night, and Holst in his musical composition The Planets, or Shakespeare in his sonnets, like the ones about the moon. We lose a means for inspiration and imagination when we lose a starry, dark night sky. And just to give you an example of how the starry night sky has inspired a 7-year-old, and what he did, the action he took as a 7-year-old in asking his mayor something. This is a boy from Portugal, so it will be in Portuguese with English subtitles. Okay, let me just try to get this going. Okay.
Esta é a minha rua. Como podem ver, está muito mal iluminada. Os candeeiros são mesmo péssimos. Iluminam para onde não é preciso, para o céu. Senhor Presidente da Câmara, estou a pedir-lhe troque estes candeeiros por outros, tapados em cima e dos lados, para iluminar melhor a rua, diminuir a poluição luminosa e ainda poupar dinheiro. Eu sou um das Sky Rangers, porque quando for grande quero ser poeta. E os poetas precisam das estrelas brilhantes e da lua romântica para se inspirarem no seu pensamento profundo.
So that little boy wanted very much to be a poet and was inspired by the night sky. And he actually did get his mayor to change out the lights, at least on that street, so that they were fully shielded and not glowing everywhere, just downward where it was needed. So the question now becomes, what other things do we lose when we can no longer view a pristinely dark night sky? Because it's not just astronomers looking to do their research, and it's a little more than poets, right? But anyway, one thing you do lose, when you lose too much of the night sky. For instance, there's billions of dollars a year that are actually wasted in energy consumption through unshielded lights, like you saw in the film there, that are shining everywhere, and especially where you don't need it. And sometimes they stay on longer than when you need them, because who's walking around at 2 or 3 in the morning, right? Basically. Another factor is the glare. If you have aging eyes, I'm getting to that point, where glare creates all sorts of hazards. Like when you can't see beyond a certain point at an intersection, you might actually get in trouble when you're driving. Or if you're trying to sleep and light trespasses into your bedroom window and makes it difficult to sleep. And there are other human health factors, to take into consideration that have to do with your circadian rhythm, or they call them circadian sensitivities. And when they're disrupted, that disruption can actually cause increases in things like obesity or depression or sleep disorders or even diabetes. And it actually concerns a bit with the depletion of the melatonin levels that are in your brain, actually in the pineal gland in your brain. It's a hormone that's manufactured, and every night when it's dark, it actually repletes. The levels come back up. So you do need that darkness. We are diurnal animals, day and night animals. So in the daytime, it's fine to get the melatonin depleted. It's fine. It's the natural course of things. But at night, we do need that sleep, and we need to be able to have the correct levels of melatonin so that you don't get sick. And some of that actually has ties to cancer. Those are still ongoing studies, and I can't say that conclusively, but getting a good night's sleep in a dark room is very imperative. And then, of course, you have the habits and the habitats of animals, and they can be extremely negatively affected. And there are some animals that actually are endangered because of this. Some of them are pushed to the brink of survival. And there are migrating birds that are confused by city lights. There are also turtles that are trying to get back, they hatch and they try to get back to the ocean, but are distracted by lights on shore, and all sorts of other animals. That's a whole presentation in itself. And then, of course, you have the astronomers trying to do research in a washed out sky sometimes, trying to understand our universe and our origins. So there's some simple actions you can take, and I just have one slide on this. So here's some suggestions. You can ask yourself things like, does the outdoor light serve a clear and necessary purpose? Is the amount of light appropriate for the intended task? Are the lights energy efficient? Does the light fall only where it's needed, and is it on only when you need it? So is it fully shielded? And do you have timers, for instance, to control when it's on, or maybe a motion sensor or dimmers? Does the light actually have a warm color to it? Because like a yellowish or reddish kind of light instead of a blue light, because a blue light, especially at night, is more harmful to you. And if you want to know more, the place to go is the International Dark Sky Association at darksky.org. They are the wizards of light pollution. They know everything. They're real experts. So they're the place to go. So as this picture shows, if you do light better, you do not end up wasting energy. You direct the light to where you need it and where it's not needed. The better we do that, then the better we're able to see the stars, as this picture shows. And it's a truly win-win situation. So now, with that long intro, I get to Globe at Night, and it is the citizen science program that Renee was mentioning earlier. And we invite people from all over the world, ages 8 and up, to participate in a 10-day campaign that's only once a month. And those 10 days change because of the lunar phases. You don't necessarily want the moon up to be a natural light bulb in the night sky. So you try to make it when there's 10 days where the first half of the night there's no moon. And that does change, as I said. So to bring back the stars requires thinking of the night as part of our landscape, as I was alluding to earlier. A very valued environment that deserves our attention and our preservation efforts. And to acknowledge that something has value does require awareness, relevance, and possible action. So we talked about the relevance in terms of how light pollution affects our lives. And we did talk a little bit about some simple ways we can take action at home. So one means to increase awareness of the impact of light pollution is through a citizen science program called Globe at Night that I just introduced, and that started about 14 years ago. The worldwide campaign involves the public in recording the night sky brightness and matching the view of their constellation of the month. Is like, the flavor of the ice cream of the month sort of thing. One is almost a different one every month, but not quite. And requires you to look at that constellation and match what you see with 7 charts that we have, and I'll show you in just a minute. And where you see the faintest star in the chart, in the sky and in the chart, that's the chart you're going to pick. You're not counting stars, just to iterate that, because if you're in a dark site, you'll be there all night. But I have to brag first, because there are a couple of countries that are just doing outstanding. And this is going to relate to a challenge I'm going to give you at the end of this presentation. So the first country I want to tip my hat to is Australia, because it's not just the number of observations that they have, but the fact that in one night, because they gave a challenge to everybody in the country, they challenged that on their longest night of the year, which is June 21st for the Southern Hemisphere, that they challenged the people to submit as many measurements as they could, and they took 6,700 measurements in one single night. So hats off to Australia. And they beat the USA in the number. Usually the USA is heading the top of the charts there. So USA is number 2, and number 3 is actually Spain, but not the continental Spain. It's actually Spain's Canary Island off the coast of Africa called La Palma. And this one had this little island is only about 1/15 the size of Hawaii, the big island of Hawaii. So it's very small, 700 square kilometers just about. And in that little area, they took over 3,300 measurements. Amazing. So if these people can do these things, so can we. To give you a bit more background, we have a little recording just to kind of parse things up, cut things up in terms of my speaking all the time. But the interesting part, I have to say, is toward the end of this. This is not me speaking at the beginning. So let me give you the overview here of Globe at Night, how to participate.
Hello, everyone. My name is Connie Walker. I am the director of the Globe at Night, and also an astronomer at the NANOCEF's National Optical Infrared Astronomy Research Laboratory here in the United States. In the Globe at Night project, people around the world go out at night, look up at the stars, and let us know what they see. In many areas around the globe, artificial lights on the ground shine up into the sky so that fewer and fewer stars are visible year after year. This light pollution from the ground is causing the stars to disappear. By telling us which stars in one constellation, like Orion, you can see from your location, the Globe at Night project measures light pollution around the globe year after year. By choosing which of these charts best matches your sky, you tell us how many stars are visible where you live. You can print these charts from our Globe at Night website or use our Globe at Night web app on your mobile phone instead of printing the charts. Telling us what you see in the night sky will help a lot. This is what Orion looks like for me in Tucson, Arizona, USA. If people make observations year after year, we can then measure how the number of stars people can see is changing. In 2020, we'd like to invite you, your friends, and your family to join people all around the world to take part in our major campaigns that occur in February and in March. Let's hear from some people who have taken part in the past.
Hi, my name is Eileen Grabowski, and I live in Norman, Oklahoma, where my students and I do Globe at Night to look for Orion. In town, we're a 3 or 4 on the magnitude chart. When we go out to our observing site at Washington Elementary, we're definitely a 5. And then when we go to the Okie-Tex Star Party in Kenton, Oklahoma, we're somewhere between the 6 and the 7.
Здраво, аз се викам Каролина Дамяновска, живеем в Прилеп, Северна Македония и за мен Орион изгледа вака.
Hello, my name is Kyra Xavier. I live in the small town of Waikowhiti near Dunedin in the South Island of New Zealand. And for me, Orion looks like this. Oops. It looks like this.
こんばんは、越智信明です。東京ではオリオン座はこのように見えます。
Hi, Maru Ezako Baroni, Moa depende Uganda, Manima Orion Cine Ile.
Olá, meu nome é Marcelo, eu moro em Campos Goytacazes, no Brasil, e eu vejo Orion dessa forma.
Hallo, mein Name ist Sabine und ich wohne im Sternpark Biosphärenreservat Rhön und bei uns sieht man den Orion am Rande ungefähr so und mitten im Sternpark sieht man den Orion so.
Hello, my name is Charlotte. My name is Rebecca. We live in Tucson, Arizona. For us, Orion looks like this.
So that's good, yeah. Okay.
Hello.
So I wanted to show you by doing that, especially that last part, just how much involvement there is from all over the world. And it really is an easy project to participate in, a lot of fun, and has a lot of value. So these are the charts I wanted to talk to you about that you will see on that report page, otherwise known as a web app. And there's 7 of them total. And here are the first 3. So the one you see here is a very light polluted sky. So this would be like for New York City in the Northern Hemisphere. You use the constellation in the Northern Hemisphere for Cygnus, the swan. And you can barely see it on here because it didn't replicate too well, but you can see the swan's body here and the wingspan here. That looks like a cross. And you can identify it immediately when you go out. It'll probably be right above your head during this week and half of next week during the campaign. You'll see 3 stars, and you'll see the stars of Vega, Deneb, and Altair, and they make what they call a summer triangle. Those are 3 brightest stars in 3 different constellations. And then when you can find them, you actually match what you see with one of the 7 charts. And if it's like New York City, you'll get chart 1. And as you go to darker and darker cities, you're going to get more and more stars. And what you're looking for, again, is not to count them, but the faintest star. So if you go to versus chart 7, you might be at one of the national parks where you cannot tell one constellation from another. For the southern hemisphere, you're going to be using Sagittarius, the Archer, and that one falls very close to 2 major planets, Jupiter and Saturn. Right below Jupiter, you're going to see just a few stars that look really like a tea kettle, actually, a teapot, if you have a dark enough sky. Okay, so the first chart would be like in Santiago, where you're only going to see maybe Jupiter and Saturn and Alpha Centauri down to your lower left here. And if you go to darker and darker skies, you get to see more and more stars, and you're just now beginning to see the teapot that is located right here. And it's actually pouring in a downward direction, believe it or not. The lid is right over here. And let me show you the next four charts for Sagittarius. You'll see that this one here has the most stars. You might be in a place like Fray Jorge, which is one of the national parks in Chile as well. So, and again, you can't tell one constellation from another if you're in that dark a night sky. And here we have our web app or report page, and here's the address, www.globeatnight.org/webapp/, and it's very easy to use this online report page. It has 6 easy steps. You can actually use it in a night mode, and when you do use it, it only takes about 30 seconds, but I have to stress that before you start measuring, your light pollution level, you want to probably get dark adapted. You want your eyes to adjust to the dark about 10-15 minutes. And then once your eyes are adjusted, literally it'll take you 30 seconds to take the measurement. So if you want, take more than one. Why not? Okay, so the first 2 steps you have when your observation was made, and they're going to ask you your date and time. And actually right before that, they might ask you if Globe at Night can have access to that information. You're going to say yes, of course. And so you put in the date and time, and the next one is asking your location. And you can put that in too, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. If you have a smart device, either a cell phone that's smart or a tabloid, you can actually put in, this will actually put in the data for you automatically, and you won't need to enter anything at all. You'll see that it's done automatically. However, if you're worried about putting in your location because you don't know your latitude and longitude, that's perfectly fine. You put in your street address, which is not kept. It's translated immediately into latitude and longitude. So, and then you can also put in maybe the corner of 2 streets that's nearest your observations, or if you happen to be at like a national monument, like in Paris, you're at the Eiffel Tower, you could just put that name in there and it automatically translate to your latitude and longitude. No worries. And then, of course, the most important part is actually part 3, where you're going to determine which chart is like what you see in the night sky, what is basically your light pollution level, and where you leave it. You're going to click on these thumbnails at the very bottom here. Where you leave it is your measurement. That's as simple as that. So we're comparing again the faintest star you see with what you see in the night sky and not counting. Number 4 is your weather conditions, right? And we're hoping that you're going to pick the one that's clear. I hope you're measuring when it's clear, let's just say. Because if it's very cloudy, like the other end of the choices here, the data is not going to be very helpful, I'm sorry to say. There are, in both steps 3 and 4, areas to comment, but you don't need to do that. So very simply, you might just have 2 things to input before clicking the submit button. But there is another, I forgot to get it, I'm so sorry guys. There is another step here. I'll show you in the next slide. If you have, and some people do have this, something called a sky quality meter, it'll actually take a measurement that you can insert here in this particular step. And it's a measurement, again, of the night sky brightness per area of the sky, basically. And so I'll show you that in just a second. If you don't have it, no worries. Leave it blank and just hit that submit data button in step 6. And then you have, this is the sky quality meter. I wanted to show you an example because I forgot to get it out of my little treasure box I have in the closet there. And you will hold it above your head before taking a measurement. Be very stable. You hit the start button with your thumb maybe, and the sensor, aiming upwards. You try not to have anything obstructing that field of view for that sensor. And the numbers will come out where the little red part here. And if you have maybe numbers between, 14 and 22, the higher the number, the darker the night sky. And that's what you're going to register if you have the sky quality meter on the web app or report page. So this is what our web page looks like, the front page. We have another video that tells you how to do things if you'd like to see that. We have very clearly marked different web pages where you can get different types of information, a little more about us. You can learn things like what a magnitude is, what mythology is, how to find a certain constellation in the night sky. The Observe page gives you those instructions of 6 steps again. It also gives you the dates for the different campaigns. The report page you just saw. Basically, it looks like that, even on the computer. And the maps and data, everything you want for the last 14 years is on that particular page, plus the fact you have an interactive map that shows the data almost exactly after you give it a couple hours. But and the thing with that map, though, it only shows the last, Google changed its rules recently. So we can only see not all 20,000 points that we have this year, but maybe only a tenth of that right now. So we have to figure that out. But you can see the most recent data points, and you can also see all of the data points zooming into a particular region with a tool we call the regional map. That's on that page too. You can do that as well. So it's very cool. And from doing that, you can actually download the data immediately for your area. So it's really, really a great tool. And you can brag to everybody in your town that this is what you've done. And look at my data, look at my map. And then we have resources here that range from everything to postcards in your language, in like 24 or so or more languages that we have that you can download. And I think I have that on a slide that I showed, and maybe on another slide later. But and then we have things like the activity guides. If you cannot do it immediately with the report page that's on your cell phone, you can use the activity guides and put it into your computer later. And we also have things like web pages that some countries have done in their native language as well. So all you need pretty much is here. If you need other things, let us know. We'll be happy to add them if we can. And we're always welcome to ideas. And let me go to the next. Okay, a lot of people ask, okay, well, how can this stuff be used? And of course, monitoring things over time is one of the biggest reasons to do this. See what changes and trends there are. If you have to do something about it, you'll know. Some people are interested in how it relates to population density because that does have a correlation with the light pollution level. And some people like to do lighting surveys to see if they need to make changes, or they like to search for dark sky places where they can go and take their telescopes or just observe. Or if you already have ordinances, they like to go around and see if people are complying to the lighting ordinances. And then there are people who are very interested in how light pollution affects either animals, plants, human health, safety, energy, costs, all sorts of things you can do. And they make great science festival kind of posters too for students to do as well. I've done that many times. Okay, so I'm just going to show you maybe 4 or 5 slides, and then we're getting toward the end here, but I needed to brag again, okay? And I'm bragging about the kids that are involved with this. Kids have done the most amazing things. And one of the ones I like to brag about are a community near Michigan, Indiana area. There's a school district that got involved with 3,700 elementary and middle schoolers that wanted to visualize their data. And the way they did that was with 35,000 Lego pieces and made a data map, basically, of their data. And you can see that in the lower right-hand section. They actually they built it up so that every layer was a different color and represented the light pollution level. So the bottom one would be like in New York City, and the top one would be like a national park. And their city, the values they got were somewhere in between, so they actually ended up taking off 12,000 Lego pieces to represent their data map. And they did it as a computer program too. You can see the top. And this got so much media attention, you cannot believe. And then the next one, these high schoolers with some amateur astronomers as their guide wanted to make their lighting, they wanted to have lighting laws actually in their city of Norman, Oklahoma. And this took a couple of years for them. Well, they completed the study pretty quickly, but they put it in front of their city council, and within 2 years, and thankfully it wasn't longer, they did get strong lighting laws passed in the city of Norman, Oklahoma. So kudos to those high schoolers and amateur astronomers. Then there's undergraduates. So I'm picking sort of stories from different levels of kids. And these undergraduates worked with an organization called the Arizona Game and Fish to answer a question of whether this threatened and endangered species of bat was actually circumventing city center in Tucson for a reason, or if they needed to make the lighting laws even stronger. And so you could see how at night in the national park, they live here on the eastern side of Tucson, and they every morning they go to feed, or every night they go to feed in this area 25 kilometers away and come back again by morning. And so they found out that this was only one of three factors, and so it didn't necessarily hinge upon that they had to make the lighting laws stronger, which they're already strong in Tucson as it is. But it was a very interesting study. So these students took 3,500 sky quality meter measurements all over town and made this map where you see this is like a mountaintop where that's the highest light pollution levels. So these people put in a lot of effort. And the one I'm very proud of as of late just happened less than a month ago. Two young ladies that you saw at the very end of that film, they're twins. They're middle schoolers that were going for their Girl Scout Silver Award, and they made a website on light pollution for kids by kids. And it's amazing. You've got to take that website address down and look at it, because it's truly an amazing website that they did. And kudos to those two sisters. So anyways, so here you have the postcard again. And again, this is in various languages. I meant to put the one in Spanish here. I apologize. But here we have the dates. We're already in our second day or second night for Globe at Night. It started last night, and it goes for another 9 nights. And then we'll have 10 days in October, November, and December. You can see the dates there. There'll be more for next year. We're in the process of determining the dates now for next year. And so we invite you to participate whenever you can, for as much as you can. It is totally, totally appreciated. And here's the challenge. So for this campaign, we've tried to have a challenge almost every month, and that's why I'm sorry I didn't explain, but in the film I showed you last, it said February, March, and we had made that video especially for a Valentine's Day theme that we had, Love Your Stars. So that's why you heard February and March. But that film is applicable at any point we have a campaign. So anyway, so this month we have a special day coming up this month where it's the autumnal equinox. Equinox meaning equal day and equal night. So the same number of hours in the day and night for most of the world. And that means you have a level playing field in terms of the number of hours you have available to make your measurements, right? So we're giving you that opportunity to submit as many measurements as you can so that your country wins, basically. Let's see how many measurements we can get this month, okay? Anywhere in the world. And I'll be looking forward to seeing your measurements stream into our database. So as we overcome our ancient instincts, telling us always to push for more light, we have to remember to simply look up more and enjoy our cultural heritage, the starry night sky, and hopefully be willing to protect it. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Connie. It's such a wonderful program, and I know that you've poured a lot of energy into it in all of these years, but it's wonderful to see those observations from all over the world and so many different people who are directly contributing to important science by taking these observations from wherever they might be.
Well, thank you very much.
For our viewers, if you have any questions for Connie about the Globe at Night program or about what Connie does, because part of the big astronomy project, which I should take one moment to say what it is in case we have any new viewers. Big Astronomy is a National Science Foundation funded project that has multiple components, and the largest of which is a planetarium show that was created by the California Academy of Sciences. It's a bilingual show made in both English and Spanish, and it's about the National Science Foundation funded telescopes that primarily are in Chile, at least the ones that are featured in this show are. Not about the telescopes themselves, though. This show is really about all the diverse people and skills it takes to make big astronomy and big science happen. Because there's a whole lot more people who work at these observatories than astronomers. There's all sorts of skills, talents, diverse backgrounds, and people from all over the world that it takes to make these huge collaborative projects happen. And Dr. Walker has been involved in astronomy for a long time, working for NSF's NOIRLab, which has evolved, I know, over time. So I'd just like to ask you, maybe to get us started before we get some of our viewer questions, can you just describe your job a little bit? I know you're the director of the Globe at Night program, but I'm sure there's many, many other things that you do.
Oh, wow. Well, yes, there's a couple major things out of my work day. One is that we have this incredibly wonderful program called the Teen Astronomy Cafe, and that has nothing to do with light pollution, but it has everything to do with students and getting them inspired to consider science, technology, engineering, or math. And the way we do this when we were in person before COVID-19 is that we actually did have a cafe once a month, and there would be a scientist either from NOIRLab, or there's a couple of different observatories in the Tucson area, like Stewart Observatory, come and give a presentation for just about a half an hour at most on their area of expertise. And it was so exciting. It'd be like gravitational waves or exoplanets or lots of really cool things. And then in the next hour or so, the students would actually experience the research that astronomer would do. And we would have already set up a Python notebook, they call it, which with how to actually analyze the research. And the kids would have such a blast. And they would learn a tiny bit about Python coding, because high schoolers have not had too much of a chance doing that. And the more they see it, the more they get acclimated to it. So that's not a hardship at all. And they would have so much fun. We would go over the time period that we're allotted and stay, and we almost always had glowing reports. And now we've put this online. We've had two what we call Teen Astronomy Cafes in April and in June, and we're going to continue in October and go through the whole year. And it's been a tremendous amount of fun, let me tell you. So it's going to be an easy thing for people to download from their browser, not even download, just use on their browser. So stay tuned and look on our website for more information. The other thing that, if I may, is it all right, Q&A? The other thing that I could mention is that I've been very, very involved. I'm very involved with light pollution issues of all sorts at all different levels, from local all the way up through international. So I'm involved with various organizations, and one of the things that have come to light in the last year has been the issue with satellite constellations. And we have been working actually with one of those companies, SpaceX, and with experts all over the world in industry and mostly in astronomy, to try to figure out ways to mitigate or to solve the problems that satellite constellations, because they're so darn bright. SpaceX has been wonderful in that they've implemented two different kinds of solutions, and the second one is just now at a place in the night sky where we can actually start watching them. But the problem is too that a lot of observatories, because of COVID-19, are not open. So anyways, we'll figure it out though, and it won't be as it was before these satellite constellations were launched, but we're hoping to make it better. And they're going to be, in the next 10 years, over 100,000 of these satellites launched. So we are going to have a problem. So that's the second thing I work on a lot. Anything else you have to ask? I'm sorry.
Sure, yeah. No, we have some viewer questions.
Oh, good.
We have a question from Andy. How do you take into account different viewing conditions, sky transparency, for example, that would affect the data?
Yeah, we do that by an aggregate of observations. You're absolutely right. And actually, there's an issue too with aging eyes, right? You have to take that into consideration too. So we're not negating all those things, but what we try to do is take an aggregate of observations in a particular area or any area, and make that the general consensus, basically, for the night sky brightness. Good question. We do also take into consideration elevation. We do that because we know where you are. So that's another thing to think about.
We have another question from Kenneth. Has anyone considered developing a smartphone app to use the smartphone cameras to measure the light pollution levels?
Yes, actually, that has been considered. We could consider it further. However, there's so many different kinds of camera capabilities on the smartphones that you can't get them all to actually agree with one another in terms of calibration. So that's another thing too. But it is a good consideration. Yeah.
And finally, one more question from Tim. Some people may want to get involved in their local communities. Is there a collection of lighting ordinances that communities have implemented successfully? And if so, where can people find that information?
Well, different communities all over the world have lighting ordinances, but not as many as you'd like to see. So the first place to start is to go to your own city. Your city must have a website somewhere in which you can find out that information. Like for us, it's Pima County that has that lighting ordinances on it. And for the most part, the city of Tucson agrees with those lighting ordinances. There are some differences, so that's a good place to start. In terms of a generic lighting ordinance if you don't have one already, again, the International Dark Sky Association has that kind of information with which you could start and think about if you want to use that as the basis to develop your own lighting ordinances for your own city or area.
And Connie, thank you. I have a question since you have this nice slide up. I know I wanted to know what inspired you to work in science. When did you first start thinking that maybe science would be a career that you would want to pursue? And what do you think was something that sparked you towards that?
Well, there's a couple of inspirations. I'm actually a second generation person in the U.S. My family actually came from Greece just a couple generations ago, and so basically they were my inspiration, my first inspiration. They were the ones that had me go to college. I was actually the first person in my family to ever go to college. Another inspiration was actually Apollo 8, not just the landing on the moon, which came later, but Apollo 8 on Christmas Eve. I don't want to say the year because I was a very small child. Apollo 8, a few decades ago, took this shot that you see in the upper left of the Earth from orbiting the moon. It's not actually on the moon, but orbiting the moon. So it was the first time that anyone on Earth had ever seen a shot of Earthrise, basically. And that photo inspired an entire generation, not just me, but an entire generation. So that was just amazing. And then the third thing, I guess, was the original Star Trek, which also dates me there again. But the original Star Trek there was never a show like it, and it just expanded your imagination in terms of what possibilities may lay out there in the future. So that was a big inspiration, believe it or not, to me. Although I have to admit, it took a couple more series before women took on a significant role, right? And so I didn't know that as a child, but as I grew up, I understood that better. And then just to let you know that shot with those saguaros, that's real saguaros from where I live, not too far from where my house is, and that's where I went to graduate school, and went away and came back basically. But this is where I live now.
And when did you think that maybe you would start pursuing a career in science? What was it? I mean, these are some of the things that inspired you, but was it in college? Was it before college?
No, it was before. I probably was right before middle school, I would say. I had some projects as a sixth grader, and then as a junior high and seventh or eighth grades, my parents actually were incredibly supportive, and they brought me to the Boston Museum of Science, which had astronomy courses at night, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And ever since that point, I was entrenched in it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful opportunities like that you can give to young people to really encourage their learning. As a parent, that's something I'm always on the look for, and I'm so glad that your parents provided that for you. Um, One thing that we like to also think about is that, people are more than just their professions. And so clearly science and astronomy are passions for you, not just your profession. But what else do you like to do in your free time, Connie? What's something different that is a part of your life that you don't mind sharing with our audience?
Oh, I don't mind at all. I get kind of shy talking about myself, but that's okay. Well, I have I told you, I have a big Greek heritage that I try to keep alive a little bit, and so there's some Greek cooking in there. I love to Greek dance. Any opportunity I can get. In fact, one of my collaborators at NOIRLab, Rob, had me import that as part of an exercise for one of our programs because it actually illustrates how light hitting a surface, a different surface, a different medium. It's a long story, but actually behaves. So we actually do Greek dancing in the process of doing that. It's kind of funny. And anyway, and the other thing, I love to hike. Absolutely love to hike. I haven't been able to do much of that this summer because it's been incredibly hot in Tucson, even in the early morning. Um, and I love to do painting. I love art, and it's always so. A lot of the hobbies I have are not related to science. I hate to say it, or astronomy. They're sort of outside and use my other half of the brain, basically, in the process. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Connie Walker. Thank you for sharing this wonderful information about the Globe at Night project. I hope all of our viewers will visit the Globe at Night website, which we have linked to in our comment section of this video, and download the app and get started making observations in your backyard. And thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself. We'll be back again with another event similar to this. Our next big event is the premiere of Big Astronomy. So that will be on September 26th. We'll be showing the film in 360, streaming it in 360 to our YouTube channel and sharing it on this page. And so you're welcome to share. If you're a planetarium professional watching, you're welcome to share those streams with your audience. You're also welcome to stream it yourself. We have instructions for that on our website, and we've emailed it out. Sign up for our mailing list. You can do that at bigastronomy.org. If you haven't already liked us on social media, please like and follow us on social media. And we're very excited then that in October we'll be having events featuring the observatories that are in the Big Astronomy film. So we'll have sort of a Meet ALMA program, a Meet CTIO, and a Meet Gemini Observatory with the education and public outreach officers who work at those facilities to give you and your audiences an overview of those wonderful science facilities. And we'll continue the Real People Big Astronomy series of events after that, featuring folks from the United States and Chile who work in these large science facilities of many different jobs and backgrounds. So with that, I will sign off. Thank you so much to our viewers for tuning in. And if there's further questions, we'll do our best to answer them in the comments. So thank you, Connie. Thank you, Carolina.
Thank you so much.
And we'll be back again soon.